3 weeks before my daughter's wedding, I stepped into the bridal boutique with the mood of a happy father. I thought I was there to finalize the last details for the big day, but the shop owner suddenly grabbed my hand tightly and whispered, "Hey, get in the fitting room right now. Don't make a single sound." Before I could ask anything more, she pushed me into the adjacent fitting room and turned off the light. I stood there in the darkness, my heart pounding. Then I heard my daughter's voice, laughing and talking with someone. Every word they spoke felt like a knife stabbing into my heart. And I realized with painful certainty they were planning something I was never supposed to know about. Thank you for pressing play today. It means more than you know. If you enjoy powerful family stories like this, make sure to like and subscribe so we can keep bringing them to you. Now I'm curious, where in the world are you listening from right now? Leave it in the comments so we can connect. Just a quick reminder, some elements in this story have been creatively shaped for dramatic impact and reflection. Any resemblance to actual individuals or settings is unintentional, but the message is designed to make you think. I had pictured this day in my mind since the moment Evelyn first wrapped her tiny fingers around mine. I imagined walking her down the aisle, her dress flowing behind her, her eyes shining with happiness. Elizabeth used to tease that our daughter would outshine every bride in the city. I believed her. I believed in that future so completely that nothing could have prepared me for how brutally it would unravel. The morning everything changed. I walked into Mitchell's formal wear and bridal boutique to get fitted for my tuxedo. I expected excitement. Instead, I found Sharon Mitchell waiting at the entrance, her expression tight and unusually pale. I had known Sharon for 2 decades. She had altered Elizabeth's dresses, pressed Evelyn's prom gown, and stood beside us at countless mile steals. I had never seen fear in her eyes until that moment. She didn't bother with pleasantries. She guided me toward a quiet corner away from the racks of satin and lace. Her hands trembled slightly as she spoke. William I overheard something this morning. Evelyn and Dominic were here early. I didn't mean to listen, but what they were saying. She swallowed hard. You need to know. A chill crept up my spine. They're planning to take control of everything, she continued. After the wedding, they want you declared mentally unfit. They've already discussed moving you into a nursing facility. For a second, I thought I had misheard her. The words seemed impossible, like lines from a bad television drama. That can't be right, I said quietly. Evelyn would never. Sharon shook her head, her voice breaking. They talked about transferring Preston Holdings into Dominic's name, about getting a doctor to certify you as incompetent. They were specific, William. Detailed. My heartbeat pounded in my ears. Sharon wasn't the type to exaggerate or spread rumors. If she said she heard something, she had heard it clearly. Still, I fought the urge to dismiss it outright. Evelyn had always been kind, compassionate. But in recent years, something had shifted. Dominic had grown more involved in our lives, in the company, and her decisions. Are they still here? I asked. She nodded. Evelyn is in fitting room 2 trying on her gown. Dominic arrived a few minutes ago. A thought struck me so suddenly it felt like instinct rather than logic. If I could hear them myself, if I could confirm Sharon's claim, then I would know whether this nightmare was real. Is there a room next to hers? I asked. Somewhere I can listen without being seen. Sharon hesitated, pain in her eyes. Fitting room 3 is right beside it. But William, are you certain you want to hear what they might say? I didn't hesitate. If my daughter is involved in something like this, I need to know. She led me down the hallway and opened the door to the adjacent fitting room. The space was small, barely lit, the scent of fabric and perfume lingering in the air. Once inside, I closed the door quietly. A thin wall separated me from Evelyn. At first, I heard only laughter, Evelyn's voice, bright and familiar, discussing the length of her hemline. For a brief, painful moment, I hoped Sharon had misunderstood everything. Then Dominic spoke. You look perfect, he said smoothly. Graham won't know what hit him. Evelyn laughed softly. Do you think Dad suspects anything? There was a short pause, followed by Dominic's reply, low assured and disturbingly cold. He won't suspect a thing. He's too wrapped up in his fantasy of a perfect wedding. My stomach dropped. The warmth drained from my body. Evelyn's voice lowered. But what if something goes wrong? What if he finds out before? It won't. Dominic cut in sharply. Dr. Price is meeting him next week. Once the evaluation is complete, we activate the paperwork. After that, the funds move offshore. By the time he realizes what's happening, it'll already be done. Another voice entered the room, Natalie Pierce, Evelyn's maid of honor. Golden Meadows confirmed availability, Natalie added. They're prepared to admit him immediately, and visitation is restricted during the first 90 days. I pressed my palm against the wall to steady myself. Golden Meadows, a nursing home. They had already arranged details. Evelyn sounded uncertain. And the board, won't they question the transfer of control? Dominic chuckled softly. We've been planting concerns about his memory for months. A few subtle comments here and there. The board will accept medical documentation without resistance. The realization hit me with crushing force. This wasn't a spontaneous scheme. It had been unfolding quietly, methodically beneath my roof. Every dinner conversation, every wedding planning meeting, every affectionate exchange, a performance. I remembered writing checks for deposits and catering, believing I was funding my daughter's happiness. Instead, I had been financing my own downfall. Evelyn's voice grew faint, almost hesitant. I just don't want him hurt. Dominic's response carried no warmth. He'll be comfortable. That's more than enough. Silence followed, heavy, suffocating. I closed my eyes and pictured Elizabeth. She would have seen through this. She would have sensed the cracks forming in our family long before I did. Dominic spoke again, more decisive now. After the wedding, we move quickly. The sooner everything is finalized, the less risk there is. Risk. To them, I was nothing more than an obstacle. I leaned closer to the wall, forcing myself to remain still. My entire body trembled, not from fear, but from the unbearable weight of betrayal. The daughter I had raised, the boy I had taken into my home and given my name, conspiring to erase me. Every memory of Evelyn's childhood flashed through my mind, her first bicycle ride, her tears, on the first day of school, the way she clung to my arm at Elizabeth's funeral. Had any of that mattered to her? Or had Dominic slowly rewritten her loyalties? The conversation next door continued in hushed tones, too quiet now to fully distinguish. I didn't need to hear more. I had heard enough. I stepped back from the wall, pressing my hand over my mouth to silence the sound threatening to escape. My reflection in the mirror looked older than I remembered, lined with shock, hollow with disbelief. The wedding I had been preparing for wasn't a celebration. It was a carefully constructed trap. And as I stood in that cramped fitting room, surrounded by fabric and silence, one truth settled into my bones. Whatever happened next, I would not walk blindly into it. The illusion of my perfect family had shattered, and the war for everything I had built had just begun. I sat motionless in that dark, fitting room as Dominic Steele, the child I had raised, the son I had chosen, laughed about dumping me in a nursing home. And my daughter said nothing to stop him. My back pressed against the wall of fitting room 3, every muscle in my body tense. Through the thin barrier, I could hear fabric rustling as Evelyn admired herself in the mirror. Sharon's recording device sat on the shelf beside me, its tiny red light blinking silently in the darkness. I forced myself to breathe slowly, quietly, even as my world collapsed around me. Dominic's voice cut through the moment with irritation. "You look beautiful already. Can we focus now?" Evelyn responded, her tone almost defensive. "This is my wedding dress, Nick." His reply came sharp and cold. "This isn't a real wedding, Evelyn. Remember that." The words hit me like a physical blow. Not a real wedding. Everything I had imagined, every father-daughter moment I had anticipated, was nothing but an elaborate lie. The door to their fitting room opened, and heels clicked across the floor. Natalie Pierce's voice joined them. Sorry I'm late. Traffic was terrible. Dominic sounded relieved. Good. Let's review the timeline one more time. Evelyn's voice carried a note of anxiety. What if someone hears us? Dominic laughed dismissively. Relax. Sharon's at the front desk. Who else would be here? I was one wall away from them, holding my breath, separated by mere inches of plaster and betrayal. Natalie's voice shifted into business mode, clinical and precise. 3 weeks from today, Evelyn marries Graham Wells. Dominic added casually, real name Aaron Mitchell, actor from Miami. 50,000 cash. Evelyn asked, uncertainty creeping into her words. But the marriage license is real, right? Natalie confirmed yes. Legally binding. But we file for annulment after 6 months. Dominic explained as if discussing a business merger. Simple purpose, a married daughter gains access to the family trust funds. My mind reeled. Graham Wells. The man I had welcomed into my home, shaken hands with, offered congratulations to. An actor. A hired performer in this theater of deception. Dominic continued laying out their scheme. The day after the wedding, Evelyn activates the power of attorney. Natalie responded efficiently, I have the paperwork ready, completely legal. Dominic's voice took on a greedy edge. We transfer funds to offshore accounts. We're talking millions, sweetheart. Evelyn's hesitation was barely audible. Won't Dad notice right away? Dominic's laugh was cruel. By the time the old man figures it out, it'll be too late. Natalie added, the money moves through shell companies, untraceable. My hands trembled against my knees. Millions. They were planning to steal everything Elizabeth and I had built together, everything we had saved for Evelyn's future. Evelyn's voice wavered with what might have been guilt. Do we really have to put Dad in a nursing home? Dominic's response was ice, yes. He'll notice the money. We need him out of the way. Natalie explained methodically. Dr. Gordon Price will evaluate him, declare him mentally incompetent. Dominic added, cognitive decline from stress. Very believable. Evelyn's voice broke. But he's my father. Dominic snapped back harshly. He's a rich old man and we're not. Get over it. Then, as if offering comfort, Golden Meadows is nice, comfortable. He'll be fine there. Natalie concluded, once he's declared incompetent, we have full control, legal guardianship. Tears streamed silently down my face in the darkness. My chest ached with a pain far worse than any physical injury. This was my daughter. The little girl I had taught to ride a bike, consoled through nightmares, walked to her first day of school, and she was planning to lock me away. Dominic continued, his voice animated with excitement. 6 months later, we annul Evelyn's marriage. Natalie added, offshore accounts are already set up. We liquidate the remaining assets. Dominic laughed again, that same heartless sound. Then we disappear. New identities, if necessary. Evelyn asked quietly. What about Dad? Dominic's response was chilling in its indifference. What about him? He'll be at Golden Meadows for the rest of his life. I pressed my palm over my mouth to stifle any sound. My whole body shook. I wanted to burst through that door to confront them, to demand answers. But Sharon's warning echoed in my mind. You need proof. The recording device continued its silent work, capturing every damning word. Dominic's voice turned smug. You know what the best part is? He's completely blind to it. He trusts me. He trusts you. In 3 weeks, William Preston will have nothing, and we'll finally have everything we deserve. Suddenly, footsteps approached my door. The handle moved slightly. My heart stopped. Natalie's voice came suspicious and sharp. Sharon, is someone in this fitting room? I thought I heard breathing. Sharon's voice responded from the hallway, calm and convincing. No, that room's closed. We're repairing the ventilation system. I froze completely. My heart pounded so violently, I was certain they could hear it through the wall. Silence stretched endlessly. Finally, Natalie spoke. All right, let's go. I have a meeting. I waited in that dark room for 15 minutes after they left, trembling so violently I could barely stand. When Sharon finally unlocked the door, I collapsed into her arms and sobbed. She held me steady, her grip firm, despite my weight against her. No words passed between us for a long moment. There was nothing to say that could make sense of what I had just heard. My legs felt like water beneath me, threatening to give out completely. Sharon guided me carefully down the narrow hallway toward her private office at the back of the boutique, checking over her shoulder to ensure the shop remained empty. Inside her office, she locked the door behind us and helped me into a chair. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. She pressed a glass of water into my palm, but I couldn't lift it to my lips without spilling. Sharon wrapped my fingers around the glass more tightly and raised it for me the way I had once done for Evelyn when she was feverish as a child. "William, I'm so sorry," Sharon said softly, pulling tissues from a box on her desk. "But you needed to hear it yourself." I couldn't speak. The words caught in my throat, drowned by grief and rage and disbelief. My daughter. My son. The two people I loved most in this world, plotting my destruction as casually as planning a vacation. Sharon moved to the recording device she had hidden in fitting room 3. Her fingers worked quickly, removing a small USB drive from the equipment. I recorded everything, 47 minutes total. She held the drive out to me, pressing it into my still trembling hand. "This is yours. Make copies immediately. This is legal evidence. Confession on tape." I stared at the tiny piece of plastic in my palm, this small object that contained the complete annihilation of my family. "I can't believe it," I whispered, my voice cracking. "My daughter, my son." Sharon knelt beside my chair, her eyes filled with sorrow. "There's more, William. Things they said before you arrived." She moved to her computer, plugging in a backup drive. The audio file loaded, and she scrolled backward to a conversation from 3 days earlier. Dominic's voice emerged from the speakers, cold and matter-of-fact. "The car accident 6 months ago should have worked." Evelyn's voice responded, shock evident. "What car accident?" Dominic answered without hesitation. "I cut the old man's brake lines. He got lucky." Evelyn sounded horrified. "You tried to kill Dad," Dominic replied with chilling indifference. "And I'll do it again if he gets suspicious before the wedding." The room spun around me. 6 months ago, I had nearly died when my car's brakes failed on a mountain road. I had careened toward a cliff edge, only avoiding disaster by steering into a guardrail at the last second. The mechanic had said the brake lines looked worn, possibly corroded. But they hadn't been worn. They had been cut. Dominic had tried to murder me. Sharon paused the recording, watching my face carefully. "William, are you all right?" I wasn't all right. I would never be all right again. But I nodded, gesturing for her to continue. The recording moved forward to another section. Natalie Pierce's voice asked, "What about the situation in Boston?" Dominic responded dismissively, "Laura, don't worry about her." Evelyn interrupted. "Who's Laura?" Dominic explained casually, "Just a woman I knew in Boston. She went to the police, but there was no proof." Natalie pressed, "Police about what?" Dominic laughed coldly. "She thought I stole from her, but it was her word against mine." Evelyn's voice carried suspicion. "Nick, how many people have you done this to?" Dominic's response was ice. "You're the first family member, if that makes you feel special." My mind reeled. There was another victim in Boston. A woman named Laura who had tried to stop Dominic and failed. How many others were there? How long had he been perfecting this scheme? Sharon advanced the recording again. Dominic's voice continued. I've already moved 200,000 from his accounts. He hasn't noticed. Natalie confirmed. The Cayman accounts have 1.8 million waiting. Dominic added with satisfaction. After the wedding, we take the rest. Total estimated over 2 million. Evelyn sounded surprised. That much? Dominic laughed. Your father's richer than you think, sweetheart. 200,000 already gone. 1.8 million hidden in offshore accounts. They had been stealing from me for months, right under my nose, while I smiled and wrote checks for wedding flowers and catering deposits. The recording shifted to another conversation. Natalie's voice was businesslike. Dr. Price wants 100,000 for the evaluation. Dominic agreed without hesitation. Fine. Worth it to lock the old man away legally. Then came the moments that showed how deeply Dominic had manipulated my daughter. His voice turned gentle, persuasive. Your mother would want you to be taken care of. Another clip. Your father has more money than he could ever spend. And another. We're not hurting him, just redistributing. Evelyn's voice weak and uncertain. I just want to be happy. Dominic smooth and controlling. Then trust me. This is how we get there. Sharon stopped the recording and looked at me. What will you do? Call the police. I sat up straighter, something cold and hard settling in my chest. No, not yet. Sharon's eyes widened. Why not you have evidence? I met her gaze, my voice steady for the first time since entering her shop. Because I want to see their faces when I destroy them. A plan was forming in my mind, crystallizing out of the chaos. I'll gather more evidence. I'll build an airtight case, and I'll expose them at the wedding. Sharon looked uncertain. But 3 weeks of pretending, I cut her off. 3 weeks to make sure Evelyn sees who Dominic really is. If I arrest him now, she'll think I'm the villain. If I expose him publicly with proof, she'll have to face the truth. Sharon studied my face, then nodded slowly. What do you need? I considered for a moment. A private investigator, someone discreet. Sharon brightened slightly. I know someone. Kenneth Walsh, former FBI agent. He's thorough and doesn't ask unnecessary questions. I nodded. Good. I'll contact him today. For a moment, emotion threatened to overwhelm me again. I looked at Sharon, my voice breaking. Elizabeth would be devastated. Tears filled Sharon's eyes. Elizabeth would be proud of you for fighting back. I shook my head. I failed her. I didn't protect our daughter. Sharon squeezed my hand. You're protecting her now. From Dominic. From prison. I stood carefully, my legs more stable now. Purpose had replaced paralysis. Sharon moved to the back door of her office. Leave through here. Your car is out front, go around through the alley. I paused at the threshold. Thank you, Sharon. For Elizabeth. For me. She touched my arm gently. Go. And William, be careful. Dominic tried to kill you once already. I met her eyes, my jaw set. I know. This time I'll be ready. As I stepped into the alley, Sharon called after me. William, wait. There's one more thing on the recording. She played a final clip. Dominic speaking to Natalie. If the old man gets suspicious, we accelerate the timeline. I've got contingency plans. I turned back. What kind of contingencies? Sharon's face was pale with fear. He didn't specify. But William, It sounds like he's done this before, like he's planned for every scenario. I gripped the USB drive in my pocket. Then I'll have to plan better. I walked out into the sunlight a different man than the one who had entered that shop 2 hours before. I drove home that afternoon, practicing smiles in the rearview mirror. If I was going to spend 3 weeks pretending my family hadn't betrayed me, I needed to become a better actor than Dominic Steele. The highway stretched ahead, but I barely saw it. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. In my jacket pocket, the USB drive felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Every few miles I glanced at myself in the mirror, attempting different expressions. A smile, it looked like a grimace. Excitement, it rang hollow even to my own eyes. I tried to imagine Elizabeth beside me, coaching me through this nightmare. What would she say? "William, you're stronger than you think. Do this for Evelyn. Save our daughter." The internal war raged through every mile. How could I look at my daughter without screaming? How could I sit across from Dominic without lunging across the table? But beneath the pain, something colder solidified. Determination. Strategy. I would beat them at their own game, but I needed to be smarter. Tonight would be my first test, a family dinner where I pretended everything was normal while my world had crumbled to ashes. Before reaching home, I made my plan concrete. First, copy the USB immediately and hide the original. Second, contact Kenneth Walsh tonight, no matter how late. Third act. Enthusiastic about every wedding detail, no matter how much it killed me. I took a deep breath and pulled into the driveway. The performance was about to begin. Evelyn was in the kitchen when I entered, humming as she chopped vegetables. The sound, so innocent, so familiar, nearly broke me. She looked up with a bright smile. "Dad, how did the tuxedo fitting go?" I forced warmth into my voice, channeling every ounce of willpower I possessed. "Perfect. Sharon did an excellent job. You'll be proud to have me walk you down that aisle." The lie tasted like poison, but my smile held steady. Dominic appeared from the living room, all charm and confidence. "William, good day." He extended his hand for a shake. I took it, fighting the urge to break every bone in his fingers. "Wonderful, Nick. Absolutely wonderful." His grip was firm, his smile practiced. He had no idea I knew. No idea that his entire scheme was recorded and safely in my possession. We settled around the dining room table, the same table where we had celebrated birthdays and holidays, where Elizabeth had served Thanksgiving dinners. Now it felt like a stage for an elaborate play. Dominic launched into discussion about the guest list, mentioning relatives and business associates I hadn't seen in years. I nodded enthusiastically, making suggestions, acting like the proud father, eagerly anticipating his daughter's big day. Evelyn talked about flower arrangements and seating charts. Her voice carried an edge I hadn't noticed before. Was it guilt, nervousness? I responded with interest, asking questions about centerpieces and menu selections, all while my mind screamed the truth I couldn't speak. She was planning to destroy me while discussing whether to serve salmon or chicken. Then came the hardest moment. Evelyn's eyes grew misty as she looked at the empty chair at the table's head, Elizabeth's chair. "I wish Mom could be here to see this," she whispered. She always said my wedding would be the happiest day of her life. The room seemed to tilt. I gripped the edge of the table, fighting to maintain composure. Elizabeth, my beautiful, trusting wife, who had loved Evelyn unconditionally, who had welcomed Dominic into our home, who had died believing our family was whole and loving. Thank God she couldn't see this betrayal. I cleared my throat carefully. "Your mother is watching, sweetheart, and she's so proud of you." The words nearly choked me. Evelyn reached across and squeezed my hand, tears sliding down her cheeks. I wondered if any of her emotion was genuine, or if she had learned manipulation from Dominic so thoroughly that even her grief was performance. Dominic shifted the conversation smoothly, demonstrating the calculated control I now recognized. "William, I've been meaning to mention I scheduled a checkup for you with Dr. Price next week. Just routine. We want to make sure you're in top shape for all the wedding festivities." His tone was casual, concerned, perfectly pitched. This was the trap Sharon had warned about. Dr. Gordon Price paid to declare me incompetent. I met Dominic's eyes evenly, forcing my expression to remain grateful. "That's thoughtful of you, Nick. I appreciate you looking out for me." I watched satisfaction flicker across his face. He thought I was walking willingly into his snare. Dinner finally ended. Evelyn hugged me goodnight, her embrace feeling like both comfort and Judas's kiss. Dominic clapped my shoulder, wishing me pleasant dreams. I climbed the stairs to my study, counting each step, holding myself together until the door closed behind me. At 10 o'clock, I locked the study door and exhaled for what felt like the first time in hours. The USB drive emerged from my pocket. I inserted it into my computer and began making copies, 3 in total. I would hide them in different locations, one in my office safe, one in a safety deposit box, one with my attorney. No matter what Dominic tried, this evidence would survive. Next, I opened my email. Sharon had given me Kenneth Walsh's contact information. I typed carefully, "Mr. Walsh, I require assistance with a sensitive family matter. Urgent. Can we meet tomorrow morning?" I stared at the message, my finger hovering over send. Once I pressed that button, there was no turning back. This investigation would lead wherever it led, even if it meant sending my daughter to prison. I clicked send. The reply came within minutes. 10 a.m. tomorrow, my office, come alone. Kenneth Walsh didn't waste words. Good. I needed efficiency, not sympathy. I pulled out a legal pad and began constructing a timeline. Elizabeth's death 2 years ago. Dominic's increasing involvement in Preston Holdings. The brake line accident 6 months ago that nearly killed me. The $200,000 already stolen. The wedding scheduled for 3 weeks from now. The planned transfer to Golden Meadows nursing home. Every detail needed documentation. Every pattern needed evidence. A knock at the door shattered my concentration. I quickly closed my laptop and shoved the legal pad into a drawer. "Yes." My voice came out steadier than I felt. "Dad, are you still awake?" Evelyn's voice filtered through the wood. "Can we talk?" My heart hammered. What did she want? Had Dominic sent her to test me? Had I made some mistake during dinner that revealed my knowledge? I opened the door, arranging my features into paternal warmth. "Of course, sweetheart. What's on your mind?" Evelyn stood in the hallway, her eyes brimming with unshed tears. She looked young, suddenly vulnerable, like the little girl who used to come to me with scraped knees and bad dreams. "I just wanted to make sure you're happy," she said softly. "About the wedding, about everything." I studied her face, searching for sincerity beneath the potential deception. Was this guilt, second thoughts, or another layer of manipulation? "Why wouldn't I be happy?" I asked carefully. She bit her lip, glancing down the hallway toward the bedroom she shared with Dominic. When she looked back at me, something flickered in her expression. Fear, regret. "I don't know," she whispered. "I just needed to hear you say it." Kenneth Walsh's office looked exactly like I imagined a former FBI agent's, with cameras everywhere, filing cabinets with numeric locks, and a man who saw through me in 3 seconds and said, "You're being robbed by people you love." I hadn't even sat down yet. Kenneth gestured to the chair across from his desk, his eyes never leaving my face. He was in his late 50s, gray haircut, military short, with the kind of presence that commanded rooms without effort. His office occupied the 3rd floor of a nondescript building downtown, deliberately unremarkable from the outside. Inside, technology hummed quietly, surveillance equipment, encrypted computers, communication devices I didn't recognize. "How did you know?" I asked, lowering myself into the chair. Kenneth leaned back, fingers steepled beneath his chin. 23 years with the Bureau. I've seen that expression 1,000 times. The shock hasn't worn off yet, but you're trying to be strategic about it. So tell me who's stealing from you, how much, and how long has it been happening? I met his gaze directly. On my daughter and my adopted son. Millions of dollars. At least 3 years, possibly longer. Kenneth didn't flinch, didn't show surprise. He simply pulled a notepad closer and clicked his pen. "Tell me everything." I handed him the USB drive. "This is 47 minutes of recorded confession. They don't know I have it." Kenneth inserted the drive into his computer, put on headphones, and listened. I watched his face as the recording played, the slight tightening around his eyes when Dominic mentioned the brake lines, the thinning of his lips when Evelyn discussed the nursing home, the sharp look he shot me when Natalie Pierce detailed the offshore accounts. When it finished, Kenneth removed the headphones and sat silent for a long moment. Then he began writing, rapidly filling pages with notes. Fake wedding to actor named Graham Wells. Real name probably Aaron Mitchell. Miami connections. Transfer of family trust funds post-marriage. Power of attorney activation. Offshore accounts in Cayman. Dr. Gordon Price paid to declare incompetence. Golden Meadows nursing home. Previous murder attempt via brake line sabotage. Victim in Boston named Laura. Multiple co-conspirators. He looked up. "This isn't their first rodeo. Your son has done this before." The words hit like physical blows, even though I already knew them to be true. "Can you prove it?" Kenneth nodded slowly. "Yes, but it'll take time and resources. How long do I have?" I answered immediately. 3 weeks. The wedding is scheduled for 21 days from now. Kenneth's eyebrows rose. "You want to wait until the wedding? Why not arrest them now with this recording?" I leaned forward, my voice steady with the resolve that had built through a sleepless night. "Because I want my daughter to see who Dominic really is. If I arrest him now, she'll think I'm the villain destroying her happiness. If I expose him publicly at the wedding, with irrefutable evidence in front of everyone they've lied to, she'll have to confront the truth." Kenneth studied me for several seconds, then nodded with something like respect. "All right, here's what we do. Week 1, background checks, identity verification. I'll confirm Graham Wells's real identity, investigate Dr. Price's history, and dig into Natalie Pierce's credentials. Week 2, deep financial audit surveillance on Dominic, and I'll contact my FBI connections to see if there are other victims. Week 3, build the legal case, prepare for wedding day, and coordinate with law enforcement for arrests." He pulled a business card from his desk drawer. "I'm also bringing in Howard Klein, best forensic accountant in the state. If money's been moved, Howard will find where, when, and how." I nodded. "Whatever it costs." Kenneth named his retainer without hesitation. $50,000 for my services. Howard will need $30,000. We move fast, we move quietly, and we document everything for prosecution. I wrote the check without flinching. This was my family's future, my daughter's chance at redemption. Kenneth pocketed the check and stood extending his hand. "We start immediately. First priority, verifying Graham Wells. I have contacts in Miami who can identify him within 48 hours. Second, Dr. Gordon Price. I'll pull his medical license records, past evaluations, any complaints filed against him. Third, surveillance on Dominic Steele. We need to know his patterns, his contacts, his movements." He opened a drawer and removed a cell phone, sliding it across the desk. "Burner phone, encrypted. Only you and I have the number. Don't use your regular phone for anything related to this investigation. I took the phone, weighing its significance. This was real now. Official. A criminal investigation against my own children. Kenneth's expression turned grave. William, you mentioned Dominic has contingency plans. That concerns me. People with backup schemes are dangerous when cornered. They've already tried to kill you once. I nodded, my jaw tight. I know. The brake lines 6 months ago weren't an accident. Kenneth made a decision quickly. I'm assigning protective surveillance starting today. You won't see them, but my team will be watching. If Dominic gets suspicious and accelerates his timeline, we need you alive to testify. The weight of those words settled over the room. My son had tried to murder me once. If he suspected I knew his plans, he wouldn't hesitate to try again. Living with people who wanted to put you in a nursing home required a special kind of acting. I smiled over breakfast, discussed wedding flowers at lunch, and at night, I reviewed the evidence that would destroy them both. 3 days had passed since my meeting with Kenneth Walsh. 3 days of performance so exhausting that by evening I barely recognized myself in the mirror. The man staring back had mastered deception, wearing joy like a mask, while rage burned underneath. Every morning I reminded myself 18 more days. 18 days of pretending, of nodding along to wedding plans, of shaking Dominic's hand without breaking his fingers. Day 3 began like the others. I descended the stairs at 7:30 to find Evelyn in the kitchen humming as she flipped pancakes. The domesticity felt surreal, my daughter preparing breakfast while planning my imprisonment. She looked up with a bright smile. "Morning, Dad." 18 days. Can you believe it? Her excitement seemed genuine, which made everything worse. How could she smile like that while conspiring against me? I poured coffee, forcing enthusiasm into my voice. "Time's flying, sweetheart. Have you finalized the flower arrangements?" She launched into details about roses versus peonies, centerpiece heights, and color schemes. I nodded appropriately, asked meaningless questions, and wondered if any part of her still loved me. Dominic joined us 10 minutes later, impeccably dressed. He kissed Evelyn's cheek and clapped my shoulder with false warmth. "William, good morning. That appointment with Dr. Price, I scheduled it for Friday at 2 o'clock. That works for you, right?" His tone was casual, but I caught the steel underneath. This wasn't really a question. I met his eyes over my coffee cup, keeping my expression grateful. "Friday's perfect, Nick. I appreciate you handling this." Evelyn turned from the stove, concern crossing her features. "Dad, are you feeling all right? You seem tired lately." The worry in her voice sounded genuine. Perhaps guilt was keeping her awake too. I waved away her concern. "Just wedding excitement, honey. Lots on my mind." Dominic smiled, that practiced smile. "All the more reason for the checkup. We want you in top form for walking Evelyn down the aisle." The manipulation was masterful, framing his trap as concern for my health, for my role in her wedding. After breakfast, I retreated to my study. The encrypted phone Kenneth had given me buzzed precisely at 9 o'clock. His message was brief. "Check secure email, findings attached." My heart rate accelerated as I logged into the untraceable account Kenneth had set up. The files loaded. Each document peeled back another layer of Dominic's carefully constructed lies, revealing the rot beneath. Graham Wells's file appeared first. Real name Aaron Mitchell, age 34, from Miami. Criminal record included fraud, identity theft, and impersonation. He had posed as a lawyer, a doctor, even a minister. Current employment: actor for hire in elaborate cons. Bank records showed a $50,000 deposit from an LLC traced back to Dominic. My daughter's fiancé was a professional criminal hired like a caterer. Dr. Gordon Price's file was equally damning. Licensed psychiatrist with a corrupt history. 3 previous cases where his competency evaluations had been challenged in court. One overturned completely when evidence emerged of falsified diagnoses for money. His medical license hung by a thread, multiple ethics complaints filed over the years. Bank records showed a $100,000 payment received 2 weeks ago from Dominic's LLC. He was being paid to declare me incompetent. Natalie Pierce's background revealed systematic career destruction through corruption. Former attorney disbarred in Massachusetts for ethics violations, including client fund misappropriation. Now working as a quasi-legal consultant for people operating in gray areas. She had received $50,000 from Dominic for her expertise in constructing the legal framework for their theft. But the file labeled Laura Winters, Boston victim, truly gutted me. Kenneth had tracked her down. Wealthy widow, late 60s, met a charming young man calling himself Matthew Reed. He romanced her, gained her trust, convinced her to invest in his business ventures. $400,000 disappeared into offshore accounts before she realized the truth. She went to police, but Matthew Reed had vanished. The photograph Kenneth included showed a slightly different haircut, a beard, but the eyes were unmistakable. Dominic Steele. Matthew Reed. How many names had he used? How many people had he destroyed? I sat back, the files blurring before my eyes. 24 years. I had raised Dominic for 24 years, never suspecting the predator I had welcomed into my home. Elizabeth and I had given him everything: education, opportunities, love, and this was his repayment. A knock at the study door jolted me. I quickly minimized the files and called out, "Come in." Dominic entered, his expression friendly, but his eyes calculating. "William, got a minute? I wanted to discuss the cognitive tests Dr. Price might run Friday, just so you're prepared and not anxious." I gestured to the chair across from my desk, forcing a grateful smile. "Of course, Nick. Whatever you think is best." Dominic settled comfortably, crossing one leg over the other. He looked perfectly at ease, like a dutiful son helping his aging father. His smile was warm as he leaned forward. "That's what family does, William. We take care of each other." The woman on the other end of the line said, "Mr. Preston, my name is Laura Winters. Kenneth Walsh told me you're investigating Dominic Steele. I want to help, because he destroyed my life too." Her voice carried the weight of someone who had survived devastation and emerged hardened by it. I gripped the encrypted phone tighter, my study door locked. Kenneth had warned me he was reaching out to Dominic's previous victims, but hearing Laura's voice made it viscerally real. My son, the man I had raised, was a serial predator. "Ms. Winters, thank you for calling. I'd like to hear your story directly." Laura took a breath, steeling herself. 2 years ago, I met a man named Matthew Reed at a charity gala in Boston. I had just lost my husband to cancer 6 months earlier. Matthew was charming, attentive, understanding. He seemed to know exactly what I needed to hear. The pattern was already emerging, chillingly familiar. We dated for 3 months. He proposed. I was grateful to feel alive again. He said he was starting a tech company, needed investment capital. I trusted him completely. Over 2 months, I transferred $400,000 to accounts he controlled. Then 3 days before our wedding, he vanished. Phone disconnected. Apartment cleared out. Matthew Reed didn't exist. My chest tightened. "I'm so sorry." Laura's laugh was bitter. When I went to the police, they were sympathetic, but said without proof of his real identity, there was little they could do. The money went offshore. Untraceable. I closed my eyes briefly. He's doing the same thing to my daughter, using our family's grief. Laura's voice sharpened. "Your wife passed away. I confirmed 2 years ago. Elizabeth." Dominic started getting closer to Evelyn almost immediately afterward. Laura spoke with quiet intensity. Kenneth mentioned you have evidence. Would it help if I could identify Dominic Steele as Matthew Reed? My pulse quickened. You have proof. Her tone turned triumphant. I have photographs, wire transfer receipts with his signatures, and a wedding venue contract from a Boston hotel. I kept everything hoping someday I could use it against him. Within minutes, Kenneth had set up a secure video conference. Laura Winters appeared on my screen, a dignified woman in her late 60s, silver hair, styled elegantly, eyes sharp with determination. She held up a photograph. Even through the screen, I recognized Dominic. Different styling glasses, a neatly trimmed beard, but unmistakably him. This is Matthew Reed, taken at our engagement party 18 months ago. She showed bank transfer receipts, each signed with Dominic's distinctive handwriting, but under the name Matthew Reed. Then, a contract from the Boston Harbor Hotel for a wedding reception, signed by both Laura Winters and Matthew Reed. The evidence was irrefutable. Dominic had targeted Laura with the same calculated precision he was now using on our family. The realization struck me he had used my company's money to fund those Boston trips. All those business conferences I had approved expenses for, he had been courting Laura, stealing her money, while simultaneously stealing mine. Ms. Winters, I said carefully, Dominic targets wealthy people who have recently lost someone they love, grieving and vulnerable. Laura nodded, understanding dawning. Your daughter lost her mother. He's exploiting her grief. I thought of Evelyn, how Dominic had been there constantly after Elizabeth's funeral, supporting her, consoling her, gradually isolating her from friends. My daughter wasn't a willing criminal. She was a victim he had manipulated into becoming his accomplice. What can I do to help? Laura asked. I made a decision that would either save my family or condemn us all. In 16 days, there's going to be a wedding. 300 guests. Dominic is supposed to marry my daughter to access her trust fund. I want to expose him publicly. Would you be willing to attend? To confront him with the truth about Matthew Reed? Laura didn't hesitate. I'll be there. I've waited 2 years for a chance to see that bastard face consequences. Relief washed over me. Thank you. Kenneth will coordinate the details. After Laura disconnected, Kenneth's face remained on the screen. His expression was grim. William, there's something else. The planning for your family's theft started 3 years ago, right after Elizabeth's death. The words hit like a physical blow. He used my wife's death as a launching point. Kenneth nodded slowly. He identified your family as targets while you were grieving. But there's more. I'm having trouble verifying Dominic Steele's background before he came to you at age 15. It's like he didn't exist. My blood ran cold. What are you saying? Kenneth's voice was measured but serious. I'm saying Dominic Steele might be a completely fabricated identity. We may not even know his real name. Howard Klein spread 40 pages of bank statements across the conference table and said, Mr. Preston, your son has been stealing from you for 36 months. The total is $2,317,450. And that's just what I've found so far. The number hit me like a physical blow. I had known Dominic was stealing, had heard him discuss millions on the recording, but seeing the precise figure documented, itemized, undeniable, made it devastatingly real. Kenneth Walsh sat beside me in Howard's downtown office. His expression grim as the forensic accountant continued his presentation. Outside the window, the city moved through its normal Tuesday afternoon rhythm, oblivious to the financial devastation being unveiled in this conference room. Howard Klein was exactly what Kenneth had promised, methodical, thorough, and relentless. In his late 50s, with wire-rimmed glasses and the demeanor of a surgeon, he had spent 8 days dissecting 3 years of Preston Holdings' financial records, my personal accounts, family trust documents, and investment portfolios. The results were catastrophic. "Let me walk you through the methodology," Howard said, flipping to a color-coded spreadsheet that looked like a roadmap of betrayal. "Your son employed 4 primary theft mechanisms, each designed to avoid triggering audit flags." He pointed to the first column highlighted in red. Fake vendor invoices. Dominic created shell companies NRS Holdings, Steel Consulting Group, Preston Advisory Services, all legitimate-sounding names. He submitted invoices for services never rendered. Total from this method, $890,000. I stared at the numbers, my hands clenched beneath the table. Those company names, I had approved those payments myself, trusting Dominic's explanations about business development consultants and strategic advisors. Every signature I had provided had been another nail in my own coffin. Howard continued, pointing to the yellow column. Fraudulent expense reports, business trips that never happened, client dinners at restaurants that don't exist, conference registrations for events he never attended. He was remarkably creative, mixing real expenses with fake ones to avoid detection. Total $340,000. Those Boston trips to court Laura Winters, those Miami trips to hire Graham Wells, all funded with my money, documented as legitimate business expenses. The green column came next. Direct transfers to shell companies. These were larger movements disguised as investment opportunities or business acquisitions. The money flowed through multiple intermediary accounts before landing offshore. Total $510,000. Howard's finger moved to the final column marked in blue. Family Trust Fund embezzlement. This was the most sophisticated. Dominic had Natalie Pierce create legal documents giving him limited power of attorney over certain trust accounts. He systematically withdrew funds, always staying just below the threshold that would require board approval. Total $577,000. The room spun slightly. Howard looked at me with something like sympathy. "Mr. Preston, the total documented theft is $2,317,450, and I believe there's more I haven't found yet." Kenneth leaned forward. "Where did the money go?" Howard pulled up another document, this one showing a complex web of accounts and transfers. Ultimately, the Cayman Islands. Multiple accounts, but they converge on one primary destination. He highlighted a name that made my blood run cold. S. Preston Hayes. Evelyn Preston Hayes, I whispered. Howard nodded. "Hayes is presumably the married name she'll use after the wedding. The account was established 6 months ago, with both Dominic Steele and Evelyn Preston as co-signatories. However," he pulled up another document. "There's a secondary authorization that would allow Dominic to move funds without Evelyn's approval after a 30-day period following the wedding." Kenneth's jaw tightened. He was always planning to cut her out. I felt sick. My daughter thought she was partnering with Dominic, but he had been planning to rob her too, leaving her to face the consequences while he disappeared with everything. Howard wasn't finished. He pulled out another file, this one much thinner. "During my investigation, I found some interesting cash withdrawals. One in particular caught my attention." He showed me a bank slip, $15,000 in cash withdrawn by Dominic on the exact date 6 months ago, when my car's brake lines failed. I cross-referenced this with some research Kenneth provided. There's a mechanic named A. Rodriguez who deposited $15,000 in cash the day after your accident. He's since disappeared, moved to Mexico, no forwarding address. The implications were clear. Dominic had paid someone to sabotage my car to murder me. The evidence was mounting, each piece more damning than the last. Howard continued flipping through more documents. I also found something disturbing in the personal expense category. Dominic submitted invoices for Evelyn's psychological therapy sessions, grief counseling, after your wife's death. Except I contacted the therapist's office. Evelyn attended 3 sessions total, not the 47 Dominic billed for. He pocketed approximately $18,000 by exploiting his sister's grief. My daughter's pain monetized. Dominic had found a way to profit even from Evelyn's mourning. The cruelty was breathtaking. Kenneth spoke up. "Howard, what about the escape plan?" Howard's expression darkened. "That's where it gets interesting. I found airline reservations, a one-way ticket to Grand Cayman departing 2 days after the wedding." He paused for emphasis. "One ticket, not 2. Just Dominic." I closed my eyes. Evelyn had no idea. She thought they were partners, planning a future together. Dominic was planning to abandon her immediately after the wedding, leaving her to face criminal charges alone while he vanished with millions. Kenneth pulled out his phone. "I've been in contact with FBI Special Agent Monica Blake. She's been building a case against Dominic for interstate fraud. With your evidence and Laura Winter's testimony, we have enough to freeze the Cayman accounts." I looked up sharply. "When?" Kenneth's smile was grim. "Wedding morning? The accounts will be frozen before Dominic can transfer a single dollar. He'll be trapped." Howard held up one final document. "There's one more thing. I found another account, this one in Singapore. $3.2 million. The number was staggering. Singapore? Where did that money come from? Howard shook his head slowly. "I don't know yet. It's not from your accounts, which means Dominic has other victims we haven't identified. This is bigger than we thought." Before I could process this revelation, Kenneth's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, his expression shifting to alarm. "It's my surveillance team." He answered, listened for 30 seconds, then looked at me with concern. "William Dominic is at a storage facility across town. My team says he's moving boxes, documents, computer equipment, large amounts of cash. He's preparing to run." My heart raced. The wedding is still 13 days away. Why would he run now? Kenneth stood already moving toward the door. Either he's gotten suspicious or he's accelerating his timeline. Either way, we need to move fast. The surveillance photos showed my son loading boxes into a storage unit at midnight. Kenneth's next words made my blood run cold. "William, he's not just preparing to run. He's preparing to disappear completely." We sat in Kenneth's office at 2 a.m, the city dark beyond the windows. His surveillance team had been following Dominic for 6 days, documenting his movements, photographing his meetings, intercepting his communications. The evidence sprawled across Kenneth's desk: printed photographs, transcribed messages, GPS tracking logs, each piece revealing another layer of Dominic's betrayal. Kenneth pushed the first batch of photos toward me. "These were taken 3 days ago. Boston, the Marriott downtown parking garage." I picked up the top photograph and the world tilted. Dominic pressed against a car, kissing Natalie Pierce. Not a friendly peck, not a professional greeting, a deep, passionate kiss between lovers. The timestamp showed 11:47 p.m. I checked my calendar. 3 days ago, Dominic had told Evelyn he was attending a business dinner in Boston. She had smiled, kissed his cheek, told him to drive safely. Kenneth laid out more photos in chronological sequence. Dominic and Natalie entering a hotel together. Leaving separately 2 hours later. Meeting at a coffee shop, sitting close, holding hands across the table. Another photo showed them at a restaurant, Natalie laughing at something. Dominic said, his hand resting possessively on her knee. "How long has this been going on?" I asked, my voice hollow. Kenneth consulted his notes. "Based on credit card records and hotel receipts, at least 18 months. They've been meeting twice a week, usually at the Riverside Inn, a cheap motel on the outskirts of town where no one would recognize them." 18 months. While Dominic was supposedly engaged to help Evelyn through her grief, while he was planning a future with my daughter, he had been sleeping with her maid of honor. The cruelty was staggering. Kenneth pulled up another set of photographs on his laptop. This is from last night. The storage facility. The images showed Dominic arriving at 11:30 p.m. in a rental car, not his usual vehicle. He opened Unit 247 and began loading boxes inside. Kenneth zoomed in on one photo. Inside the unit, clearly visible, were stacks of cash, multiple laptops, and several passports spread on a table. "Can you enhance that?" I pointed to the passports. Kenneth clicked through several filters until the image sharpened. The passport photo was Dominic, but the name read Robert Mitchell. Another showed Michael Ross. A third, David Steele. "He's got at least 3 complete identities ready," Kenneth said. Passports, driver's licenses, credit cards, birth certificates. These aren't cheap fakes, they're professional grade, probably cost him $50,000 each. I stared at the screen. Dominic had been planning this for years, building escape routes, creating fallback identities. This wasn't opportunistic theft, it was a meticulously orchestrated operation. Kenneth opened another file. "William, we intercepted text messages between Dominic and Natalie. I'm warning you, they're difficult to read." He handed me printed transcripts. I forced myself to look. Dominic, 2:34 a.m. Evelyn asked about the honeymoon again. I told her Bali. Idiot believed me. Natalie, 2:36 a.m. LOL. She actually thinks you're marrying her. Dominic, 2:37 a.m. She'll figure it out when the FBI shows up. By then we'll be in Singapore. Natalie, 2:39 a.m. What if she talks? Cuts a deal. Dominic, 2:41 a.m. Let her. She signed everything. Transferred the money. Legally, she's just as guilty. We planned it that way. Remember Natalie, 2:43 a.m. You're brilliant. She takes the fall, we take the money. Dominic, 2:45 a.m. That's what pawns are for baby. My hands shook so violently, I nearly dropped the papers. Kenneth watched me carefully, ready to intervene if needed. I took a deep breath and continued reading. Natalie, yesterday, 8:15 p.m. Price finished the cognitive assessment paperwork. Signs dementia and recommends immediate placement. Dominic, 8:17 p.m. Perfect. Golden Meadows has the room ready. Natalie, 8:18 p.m. Confirmed. Once he's declared incompetent, you have full control. Dominic, 8:20 p.m. The old man made this too easy. Trusts me completely, just like Evelyn. Natalie, 8:22 p.m. When do we leave? Dominic, 8:24 p.m. 2 days after the wedding. Flight to Cayman, then connections to Bangkok. I booked under Ross and Mitchell identities. Natalie, 8:26 p.m. Both tickets, not taking any chances. Dominic, 8:28 p.m. No chances, no loose ends, no Evelyn. I set the papers down, unable to read more. Does Evelyn know about Natalie? Kenneth shook his head. No indication she suspects anything. Dominic has been careful, no public displays, no overlapping schedules that would raise questions. To Evelyn, Natalie is just her loyal maid of honor. Kenneth pulled out another document. Here's their complete escape plan reconstructed from intercepted communications and financial records. Day 1, the wedding happens. Evelyn activates power of attorney, transfers trust fund access to Dominic. Day 2, Dominic and Natalie fly to Grand Cayman, empty the accounts. Day 3, they fly to Bangkok under false identities. Thailand has no extradition treaty with the U.S. Day 4. Evelyn wakes up to FBI agents at her door alone with all evidence pointing to her as a co-conspirator. The calculation was breathtaking. Dominic had positioned Evelyn to take complete legal responsibility, while he vanished with both the money and his actual lover. My daughter manipulated, used, and ultimately abandoned to face federal prosecution. Kenneth showed me one final photograph. Dominic and Natalie at an outdoor cafe, both laughing, The timestamp showed yesterday, just hours after Dominic had told Evelyn he loved her, had kissed her goodnight, had promised her a beautiful future together. In the photo, Dominic's expression was relaxed, happy, entirely at ease. This was his real self, not the devoted brother, not the concerned son, but a predator celebrating a successful hunt. "What do you want to do?" Kenneth asked quietly. "We have enough evidence now. We could arrest him tonight, freeze the accounts, end this immediately." I stared at the photograph for a long moment. Part of me wanted exactly that, wanted Dominic in handcuffs, wanted this nightmare over. But another part, the part that still loved my daughter despite everything, knew that immediate arrest wouldn't save her. She needed to see the truth herself, needed to understand who Dominic really was before the FBI destroyed him. "No," I said finally. "We stick to the plan. We let it play out until the wedding." Kenneth looked concerned. "William, he's dangerous. If he suspects, we're on to him." I cut him off, my voice harder than I'd ever heard it. "Then we make sure he doesn't suspect. We keep playing our roles. And on that wedding day, in front of 300 witnesses, Evelyn will see exactly what kind of monster she's been protecting. Let her watch him kiss Natalie. Let her hear about the escape plan that didn't include her. Let her see it all." Kenneth studied my face, then nodded slowly. "All right. But William, when this happens, it's going to destroy her." I looked at the photograph again, at Dominic's smile, at Natalie's hand on his arm. "Dominic already destroyed her. I'm just making sure she survives it." Evelyn appeared at my study door at midnight, with tears streaming down her face, and said, "Dad, can we talk? I'm having doubts about this wedding." For one moment, I thought she would confess. For one moment, I hoped I could forgive her. She stood in the doorway wearing an old college sweatshirt, looking younger than her 26 years. Her hair was pulled back messily, her eyes red and swollen. She clutched a tissue in one hand, twisting it nervously. "Come in, sweetheart," I said, closing my laptop quickly. The screen had been displaying surveillance photos of Dominic and Natalie, but Evelyn couldn't see that now. I gestured to the chair across from my desk. "What's troubling you?" She sat down heavily, fresh tears spilling over. "I keep thinking about Mom. Whether she'd be proud of me, whether she'd approve of this wedding, of Dominic, of everything." Her voice cracked on the last word, and something in my chest twisted painfully. This was my daughter, the real Evelyn, beneath the manipulation, trying to break through. I moved around the desk and pulled up a chair beside her, close enough to take her hand. It was cold, trembling. "Your mother loved you more than anything in the world. She'd want you to be happy, truly happy, not just going through motions." She looked up at me, and in her eyes I saw conflict, guilt, terror. "Dad, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." My heart began to race. This was it, the moment of truth. "Of course. Always." Evelyn took a shaky breath. "Are you happy about this wedding, about Dominic being part of our family?" The question hung between us, heavy with implications. I chose my words carefully. "What matters is whether you're happy, sweetheart. Are you?" She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. Tears fell faster now. I don't know if I..." She stopped, struggling with words that wouldn't come. I leaned forward, squeezing her hand. "Evelyn, whatever you need to tell me, you can. I'm your father. Nothing changes that." Her eyes met mine, and I saw she was on the edge of confession. Her lips parted, the words forming. But before she could speak, footsteps sounded in the hallway. Dominic appeared in the doorway wearing pajama pants and a concerned expression. "Evelyn, baby, what's wrong? I woke up and you were gone." His eyes flicked to me, assessing, calculating. Had he been listening? Evelyn's entire demeanor changed. The vulnerability vanished, replaced by something harder. She pulled her hand from mine and stood. Nothing. Just wedding jitters. Dad was helping me calm down. Dominic moved into the room, placing a possessive hand on her shoulder. Come back to bed, sweetheart. You need rest. Big week ahead. Evelyn glanced back at me, and for a fraction of a second, I saw desperation in her expression. Then Dominic guided her toward the door, his hand firm on her back, and she went willingly. As they left, I heard him whisper, "Remember what we talked about, stay focused. We're so close. Don't ruin it now." The door closed. I sat alone, my hands shaking with frustration and heartbreak. She had been so close to telling me, so close to choosing the right path. And Dominic had stopped her reasserting control with just a few words. I stood and walked to Evelyn's childhood bedroom. We had kept it mostly unchanged. Pale lavender walls, old bookshelf, lined with novels and trophies, corkboard covered with photos. I turned on the lamp and looked at the pictures. Evelyn at age 7 holding a soccer trophy. Evelyn at 12 with Elizabeth both laughing. Evelyn at 16 in her prom dress. And one of all four of us, me, Elizabeth, Evelyn, and Dominic at his high school graduation. We looked like a perfect family. I pulled that photo off the board and studied Dominic's face. Even then, at 18, there was something calculating in his eyes that I had missed. How long had he been planning this? Had he ever loved us at all? I made a decision in that moment. I would expose Dominic in the cruelest, most public way possible. Not for revenge, though God knows I wanted that, but because it was the only way to save Evelyn. She needed to see him for what he truly was needed. The scales ripped from her eyes so violently, she could never deny the truth. Back in my study, I pulled out a large manila envelope and began assembling documents. First, disinheritance papers already signed by my attorney. Second, FBI arrest warrants prepared by Special Agent Monica Blake, waiting only for my signal. Third, surveillance photos of Dominic and Natalie kissing, embracing, planning their escape. Fourth, forensic accounting reports showing every stolen dollar. Fifth, evidence of the brake line sabotage. Sixth, Laura Winters' sworn testimony identifying Dominic as Matthew Reed. Then I wrote a letter. My hand shook as I formed the words, Evelyn. By the time you read this, you will know the truth about Dominic Steele. I am giving you a choice. Cooperate with the FBI, testify against Dominic, and accept probation. Or remain loyal to him and face federal prosecution that could mean 20 years in prison. Choose wisely. Choose for yourself, not for him. I love you. Always. Dad. I sealed everything in the envelope and labeled it for Evelyn Preston to be opened after arrests. Kenneth called at 1:30 a.m. William, it's confirmed. The Cayman accounts freeze at 8 a.m. on the wedding day. The moment Dominic tries to access them, he'll get an error message. He'll be trapped. I closed my eyes, feeling grim satisfaction. Good. What about the FBI? Kenneth's voice turned cautious. That's why I'm calling. Agent Blake wants to arrest Dominic immediately. She says he's too dangerous, too likely to run. She's pushing hard for Wednesday arrests 4 days before the wedding. My jaw tightened. No. Tell her we stick to the plan. Wedding day. Public exposure. William, she's concerned about your safety. Dominic has already tried to kill you once. If he gets spooked... I interrupted, my voice hard as steel. Gee, then we make sure he doesn't get spooked. 4 more days of performance. And then in front of everyone he's deceived. Dominic Steele will finally face justice. Tell Agent Blake that's non-negotiable. Kenneth was silent for a long moment. All right, but you're taking a hell of a risk. I looked at the envelope containing my daughter's future. I'm taking the only risk that might save her. Special Agent Monica Blake spread crime scene photos across the conference table and said, "Mr. Preston Dominic Steele is a professional criminal. We've connected him to 3 other fraud cases, 2 attempted murders, and 1 suspicious death." The FBI field office conference room was sterile, and cold fluorescent lights humming overhead. Monica Blake sat across from me, flanked by 2 other agents. Kenneth Walsh sat to my right, his expression grave. We had been summoned after my insistence on waiting for the wedding day arrests reached the Bureau's attention. Agent Blake wanted to change my mind. She was in her early 40s, sharp-eyed and no-nonsense, with the bearing of someone who had seen humanity's worst. She tapped one of the photos. "This is what we're dealing with. Not some opportunistic thief, but a predator who has perfected his craft for over a decade." I forced myself to look at the photos. Crime scenes, court documents, mugshots of Dominic under different names. Each image was a hammer blow to whatever remained of my paternal illusions. Agent Blake pulled out a file folder. "Federal charges. We're prepared to file wire fraud, money laundering, conspiracy to commit murder, identity theft, interstate transportation of stolen property. If convicted on all counts, Dominic Steele is looking at 20 to 30 years in federal prison, possibly more." Kenneth leaned forward. "What about the other cases you mentioned?" Blake opened another folder. 2015, Seattle, Washington. Dominic, using the name David Sterling, targeted a wealthy widow named Margaret Chen. Over 6 months, he convinced her to invest $800,000 in fake real estate development. When she started asking questions, she died in a fall down her basement stairs. My stomach turned. "You think he killed her?" Blake's expression was carefully neutral. "Local police ruled it accidental, but Mrs. Chen's daughter insisted her mother was terrified of basements, never went down there alone. The medical examiner noted bruising inconsistent with a simple fall. No charges were filed, insufficient evidence. But David Sterling disappeared the day after her funeral, and the $800,000 was never recovered." She pulled out another file. "Divi Tukstoshi Aston Padsmith, Denver, Colorado. Dominic operated as James Carrington, befriending businessman Robert Paulson. Same pattern: gained trust, manipulated finances, embezzled $1.2 million. When Paulson discovered the theft and threatened prosecution, his car's brake lines failed on a mountain road." I gripped the edge of the table. "Like mine." Blake nodded. "Exactly like yours. Paulson survived but suffered severe injuries. He couldn't identify who tampered with his vehicle. James Carrington vanished before police could question him. We didn't connect these cases until Kenneth brought us your evidence." Another agent spoke up, younger, with a tablet. "We've identified possible victims in Phoenix, Atlanta, and Miami. We're still gathering evidence, but the pattern is consistent. Dominic targets wealthy individuals, often recently bereaved, establishes relationships, steals systematically, then disappears. When victims get too close to truth, he escalates to violence." The scope was staggering. Dominic wasn't just a con man, he was a serial predator operating across the country for years. And I had welcomed him into my home at age 15, given him my name, raised him as my son. Blake leaned back, studying me. "Mr. Preston, this is why we want to arrest him immediately. Dominic Steele is dangerous. The longer we wait, the higher the risk he'll sense the trap, and either flee or do something desperate." I met her gaze steadily. "Agent Blake, I understand your concern, but my daughter is also facing charges. If we arrest Dominic now, she'll believe he's the victim, that I destroyed her happiness. She'll defend him, possibly perjure herself trying to protect him." Blake's expression softened slightly. "I sympathize, but we can't risk—" I interrupted, my voice firm. If we expose him at the wedding, with 300 witnesses with Laura Winters testifying with photographic evidence of his affair with Natalie Pierce, Evelyn will have no choice but to face reality. That's her only chance at redemption. Kenneth added his support. Monica, we have round-the-clock surveillance on Dominic. If he makes any move to flee, we execute arrests immediately. But William is right. This public exposure is Evelyn's best chance to cooperate rather than obstruct. Blake exchanged glances with her colleagues, then sighed. All right, we'll wait. But the moment Dominic shows signs of running, we move. Agreed. I nodded. Agreed. She pulled out official paperwork. Arrest warrants are signed and ready for Dominic Steele, Natalie Pierce, and Dr. Gordon Price. Execution is scheduled for Saturday, 12:05 p.m. at St. Catherine's Church, immediately following your interruption of the ceremony. We'll have agents positioned throughout the venue plainclothes. You'll give a signal, and we move in. The weight of what I was orchestrating settled over me. In 4 days, I would destroy my son in the most public way imaginable. But it was the only way to save my daughter. Blake's voice turned grave. Mr. Preston, understand this. Dominic has killed before or come very close. If he feels cornered before Saturday, he becomes extremely dangerous. Watch yourself. The wedding week arrived like a storm I had been watching for 3 weeks. Dominic Steele played the devoted brother with Oscar-worthy precision. Every smile felt like a knife. Friday morning, the day before the wedding began, with the rehearsal at St. Catherine's Church. I drove there alone, my hands steady despite the chaos in my mind. By tomorrow at this time, everything would be over. Dominic would be in handcuffs, Evelyn would know the truth, and our family would be destroyed beyond recognition. But at least my daughter would be alive and free. The church was beautiful in the morning light, stained glass windows casting colored patterns across wooden pews. White ribbon marked where chairs would be positioned for tomorrow's ceremony. The wedding coordinator bustled around with clipboard and headset directing florists and lighting technicians. It all looked so normal, so innocent. No one knew that tomorrow this sanctuary would become a crime scene. Dominic arrived with Evelyn, both dressed casually, both smiling. He kissed her cheek, whispered something that made her laugh, then spotted me and waved. William, ready for the big day? I returned his smile, matching his false warmth with my own. Absolutely. Excited to see it all come together. Then I met Graham Wells for the first time. He was exactly as Kenneth's file had described, mid-30s, handsome, in a generic way, professional actor's charm. He shook my hand firmly. Mr. Preston, such an honor. Evelyn is an amazing woman. The irony was suffocating. Here was a man paid $50,000 to fake marry my daughter, expressing manufactured sentiment, while I, her actual father, couldn't speak the truth. Welcome to the family, Graham. I said the words, tasting like ash. We walked through the ceremony choreography. The wedding coordinator explained timing, processional music positioning at the altar exchange of vows ring ceremony. She turned to me, Mr. Preston, after you walk Evelyn down the aisle, you'll take your seat in the front row. Any questions? I looked at the altar, imagining tomorrow's scene. Actually, I might have a few words to say before the vows. Is that unusual? The coordinator smiled. Not at all. Many fathers want to address the couple. We can work that into the ceremony. Dominic glanced at me sharply, calculation flickering in his eyes. William, you don't have to do that. I met his gaze calmly. I want to Nick. I've got some things I need to say. He studied my face for a moment, then relaxed. Whatever he saw satisfied him, that I remained the oblivious, sentimental father. That evening, the rehearsal dinner took place at Marcello's, an upscale Italian restaurant Dominic had chosen. 60 guests, family wedding party, close friends filled a private dining room, Crystal chandeliers, white linens, expensive wine flowing freely. Everyone laughed and celebrated, unaware of the FBI surveillance team photographing attendees from across the street. I sat at the head table between Evelyn and Dominic, playing my role. Toasts began after dinner. Evelyn's college roommate spoke about their friendship. Natalie Pierce gave a speech about love conquering all, while secretly planning to steal my daughter's fiancé and flee the country. I smiled and applauded my performance flawless. Then Dominic stood, champagne glass in hand. The room quieted. He looked at me with masterful manipulation, gratitude, respect, affection, all carefully constructed. I want to say something about William Preston. 24 years ago, he and Elizabeth opened their home to a lost 15-year-old kid. William taught me about loyalty, about integrity, about what it means to be a man. The words were daggers. Around the room, people smiled, some wiping away tears. Evelyn squeezed my hand. Dominic continued. William, you've been more than a father. You've been my example, my mentor, my hero. Tomorrow, as I marry your daughter, I promise to honor the values you instilled in me, to protect this family the way you've always protected us. The room erupted in applause. Dominic raised his glass. To William Preston, the best father a son could ask for. Everyone drank. I stood slowly, my own glass in hand. The room quieted. I looked at Dominic, then at Evelyn, then at the gathered guests. Thank you, Nick. That means more than you know. I've watched you grow over these years, and tomorrow will indeed be a revelation. A day when everyone here will see exactly who you've become. I paused, letting the words hang with double meaning. Tomorrow will be a day none of us can ever forget. We'll all witness truth in its purest form. So please raise your glasses to tomorrow, to truth, to justice. The guests cheered and drank, missing the warning in my words. But Dominic's eyes narrowed slightly, and for just a moment I saw uncertainty flicker across his face. After dinner, I walked to my car alone. In the darkness of the parking lot, I finally allowed myself to break. My hands shook, tears sliding down my face. Sharon Mitchell approached from behind. William, are you all right? I shook my head. Tomorrow I destroy my family. Sharon gripped my arm. Tomorrow you save your daughter. Elizabeth would be proud of you. My phone buzzed. A text from Evelyn. Dad, come home. Nick went out. I need to talk to you privately. Please. I raced home at 11 p.m., heart pounding. Evelyn's text said she needed to talk privately. This was her last chance to confess before I destroyed her life publicly. The house was dark when I pulled into the driveway, only the porch light glowing. Dominic's car was gone. I found Evelyn in the living room, curled on the couch where she used to read as a child. She looked up when I entered, her eyes red from crying. Dad. Her voice was small, broken. I sat in the armchair across from her, maintaining distance, giving her space to speak. I'm here, sweetheart. What did you want to talk about? She pulled a blanket tighter around herself. Tomorrow's my wedding day. I should be excited, but I just feel wrong, like something terrible is about to happen. My chest tightened. This was it. The moment she would finally tell me the truth. What do you mean wrong? Evelyn looked at me with fear in her eyes. Dad, you've always protected our family. Always done what was necessary even when it was hard. Right. The question caught me off guard. Yes. Always. She nodded slowly, as if confirming something to herself. Sometimes protecting family means making difficult choices. Choices other people might not understand. My blood ran cold. This wasn't a confession. This was justification. Evelyn, what are you saying? She met my gaze directly. I'm saying that tomorrow, no matter what happens, I need you to trust that I'm doing what's best for our family. That Dominic and we're doing what Mom would have wanted. The invocation of Elizabeth's name using her mother to justify theft and betrayal nearly broke me. I leaned forward, keeping my voice gentle. Your mother would have wanted you to be honest, to be honorable, to choose what's right over what's easy. Evelyn's expression hardened slightly. Mom would have wanted me to be taken care of, to be secure. There it was, Dominic's manipulation speaking through my daughter's mouth. She had chosen him over truth, over family, over everything Elizabeth and I had taught her. I stood slowly. Evelyn, if you're involved in something wrong, something illegal, you can still walk away. It's not too late. For a moment, hope flickered. Her lips parted as if to speak, to finally admit everything. Then her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, undoubtedly Dominic checking on her. The moment passed. Her expression closed off. I'm not involved in anything wrong, Dad. I just wanted to tell you I love you, and that tomorrow will be a new beginning for all of us. She stood, kissed my cheek, and walked upstairs, leaving me alone in the darkness. I had tried. God knows I had given her every opportunity to choose redemption. Now tomorrow she would face the consequences of her choice. The next morning, Saturday wedding day, I woke at 6 a.m. Kenneth had arranged for Laura Winters to meet me at a coffee shop downtown at 7. She was already there when I arrived, looking elegant in a navy dress, her silver hair styled perfectly. We sat in a corner booth, and she pulled documents from her purse. Mr. Preston, these are copies of everything I have on Matthew Reed Dominic. Bank transfers, emails, photos, the wedding venue contract. I want Evelyn to see them after you expose him, so she knows he's done this before. I took the documents, my hands steady. Thank you, Laura. I know this is difficult. She shook her head. What's difficult is knowing another family went through what I did. But today, we stop him. We reviewed the plan. Laura would sit in the back of the church unnoticed until the right moment. When I gave the signal, the phrase, truth in its purest form, she would come forward. FBI agents would move in immediately after. Simple. Devastating. Final. At 8 a.m., I returned home to dress for the wedding. Kenneth called to confirm final details. 6 agents in plainclothes positioned throughout the church. Agent Blake is coordinating from a van outside. The Cayman accounts froze at 8 a.m. as scheduled. Dominic can't access a single dollar. The envelope for Evelyn is ready. We're set, William. I looked at my reflection in the mirror, adjusting my tie. The man staring back looked older than his years, weathered by grief and betrayal, but his eyes were clear, determined. My phone rang. Dominic. I answered, forcing warmth into my voice. Nick, good morning. Big day. His voice was cheerful, relaxed. William, I'm at the hotel getting ready with Graham. Want to grab breakfast before the chaos. Just the two of us, father and son, one last time before everything changes. The invitation was loaded with irony he couldn't possibly appreciate. I checked my watch. 10 a.m. The wedding was at noon. 2 hours. Sure, Nick. Where? Davidson's Diner. 20 minutes. I grabbed my keys. I'll be there. This was it. One final breakfast with the man who had tried to destroy my family. One last face-to-face before the reckoning. Dominic ordered eggs Benedict at the 5-star restaurant. I ordered nothing. My appetite had died 3 weeks ago. In 4 hours, I would destroy him. Davidson's Diner was actually an upscale hotel restaurant, all white tablecloths and crystal water glasses. Dominic had chosen it deliberately. Public, respectable, the kind of place where a devoted son takes his father on an important day. We sat by the window, overlooking the city, morning sunlight streaming in. To any observer, we looked like family sharing a special moment. Dominic looked relaxed, confident, dressed in expensive casual clothes. He smiled as the waiter poured coffee. "Big day, William. How are you feeling?" I wrapped my hands around the coffee cup. Reflective. 24 years goes by fast. He nodded, his expression turning sentimental. "I've been thinking about that too. About the day you and Elizabeth brought me home. I was so lost, so broken. You saved me, William. Gave me a life I never thought I'd have." The lies flowed so smoothly, so convincingly. "We loved you, Nick. From the beginning." The past tense wasn't accidental, but he didn't catch it. His eggs arrived, and he ate with the appetite of someone without a care. Between bites, he pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket and slid it across the table. "William, I wanted to talk to you about something before the craziness of the day. I've been thinking about your future, about making sure you're taken care of." My pulse quickened, but I kept my expression neutral. "What do you mean?" Dominic opened the envelope, revealing legal documents. Power of attorney papers, financial management agreements. I had Natalie draw them up. "The idea is that you sign these today, and Evelyn and I handle all the business stress. You deserve to rest, to enjoy life without worrying about Preston Holdings." I looked at the documents without touching them. There it was, the trap laid out in legal language. Sign these papers and Dominic would have complete control before Dr. Price's fraudulent evaluation even happened. He was accelerating the timeline. "You want me to sign these today on your wedding day?" Dominic's smile was warm, persuasive. "I know the timing seems odd, but think about it. After the wedding, Evelyn and I leave for our honeymoon. If these are in place, you can truly relax. It's a gift, William. Freedom from responsibility." I picked up the papers, scanning them. Every clause was designed to strip me of control, access to accounts authority, to make financial decisions everything. Sign these and I would be powerless. I set the papers down and looked at Dominic. Really looked at him. The young man I had raised. The predator who had tried to murder me was stealing millions, had manipulated my daughter. "You're very good, Nick. The best actor I've ever seen." Something flickered in his eyes, uncertainty. "I don't know what you mean. I'm just trying to help." I leaned back in my chair, my voice quiet but hard. "You'll see the results in a few hours, at the church, in front of everyone." The color drained slightly from his face. "William, are you feeling all right? You're talking strangely." I stood, pulling cash from my wallet and dropping it on the table. "I'm feeling clear-headed for the first time in weeks. See you at the altar, Nick." I walked out, leaving him sitting there with his unsigned papers and his crumbling confidence. Let him wonder. In a few hours, he would know everything. Back home, the house was chaos. Evelyn's bridesmaids filled the living room, makeup artists and hairdressers transforming the space. Music played, champagne flowed, everyone laughed. I slipped upstairs to my bedroom unnoticed. The tuxedo hung ready in my closet. I dressed slowly, methodically, shirt, cufflinks, vest, jacket, tie. Each piece of clothing felt like armor. In the mirror, I looked like any father on his daughter's wedding day. Proud, emotional. I picked up the manila envelope from my dresser. Inside, all the evidence, all the proof, all the ammunition I needed to destroy Dominic Steele. FBI arrest warrants, surveillance photos, forensic accounting reports, Laura Winters's testimony, the letter to Evelyn offering her one last chance at redemption. My phone buzzed. "Kenneth. All agents in position. Laura is at the church. Blake is ready. It's happening, William." I typed back, "I'm ready." At 11 a.m., I drove to St. Catherine's Church. The parking lot was already filling with guests, everyone dressed in wedding finery, everyone smiling and excited. FBI agents in plainclothes moved through the crowd. I recognized 3 of them from the briefing, though they blended perfectly. Inside the church, white flowers covered every surface. Ribbon decorated the pews. Soft classical music played. It was beautiful, exactly what Evelyn had dreamed of, and I was about to turn it into her worst nightmare. I found Laura Winters in the back row, dressed elegantly in navy blue, a wide-brimmed hat partially obscuring her face. She nodded at me slightly. Agent Monica Blake, disguised as a wedding guest in a lavender dress, stood near the side exit. 2 more agents flanked the main doors. One positioned himself near the altar, all waiting for my signal. Evelyn's wedding coordinator found me. "Mr. Preston, Evelyn's asking for you. She's in the bridal suite." I followed her down a hallway to a private room where Evelyn stood in her wedding dress. She looked breathtaking, Elizabeth's daughter, beautiful and radiant. My heart broke all over again. "Dad." She turned to me, tears already glistening in her eyes. "Do I look okay?" I crossed the room and took her hands. "You look exactly like your mother on our wedding day. Beautiful. Perfect." She smiled through tears. "I wish she could be here. She is, sweetheart. She's watching. And she loves you so much." I pulled her into a hug, holding my daughter perhaps for the last time before everything changed. "Evelyn, I need you to know something. No matter what happens today, no matter what you see or hear, I love you more than anything in this world. That will never change." She pulled back, confusion crossing her face. "Dad, you're scaring me." "What's wrong?" The wedding coordinator knocked. "It's time. Guests are seated." I kissed Evelyn's forehead. "Nothing's wrong, baby. Everything's exactly as it should be." We lined up for the processional. Music swelled. The doors opened. I offered Evelyn my arm and we began walking down the aisle. 300 guests stood turning to watch us. Flowers, music, smiles. And at the altar, Dominic Steele waited in his tuxedo, Graham Wells beside him. Dominic's eyes met mine across the distance, and for the first time since this began, I saw genuine fear in his expression. He knew. Somehow he knew something was wrong. But it was too late. The ceremony had begun. Before I reveal what happened next inside that church, I need to know something. If you're still here with me, still holding your breath before everything explodes, comment, "Expose him" below. So I know you haven't looked away. Because what's about to happen will change everything. And one more thing, the next part of this story contains some dramatized elements created for storytelling and reflection. Certain details may not reflect actual events. If this type of narrative isn't for you, this is your moment to step away. I walked my daughter down the aisle, knowing that every step brought us closer to the moment I would shatter her heart to save her life. The processional music swelled around us, beautiful and haunting. Evelyn's hand rested on my arm, trembling slightly. 300 faces turned toward us, smiling, some dabbing at tears. They saw a father walking his daughter toward her future. I was walking her toward the truth. The aisle seemed endless. White roses lined the path, their scent almost overwhelming. Sunlight streamed through stained glass windows, casting colored patterns across Evelyn's white dress. She looked ethereal, exactly like Elizabeth had looked when I had stood at an altar waiting for her. But at this altar, Dominic Steele waited with sweat beading on his forehead. His eyes locked on mine, and I saw calculation behind the fear. Beside him, Graham Wells stood rigid, his actor's smile firmly in place, but his eyes darting nervously toward the exits. In the front row, Natalie Pierce sat with the bridesmaids, her expression smug and satisfied. She thought she had won. She had no idea that FBI agents surrounded her, that every escape route was blocked. We reached the altar. The music faded. The minister smiled warmly. "Who gives this woman to be married?" This was the moment. The traditional response would signal the ceremony to continue, would set in motion the fake marriage, the power of attorney activation, all the pieces of Dominic's plan. Instead, I tightened my grip on Evelyn's hand and said clearly, loudly, "I do not." Confused murmurs rippled through the crowd. The minister blinked, uncertain. Evelyn turned to me, her face pale. "Jadad, what?" Dominic stepped forward, his voice strained. "William, what are you doing? This isn't the time for jokes." I released Evelyn's hand and moved to face the congregation, my back to the altar. 300 faces stared at me in confusion. I pulled the manila envelope from inside my jacket. "This isn't a joke, Dominic. This is justice." My voice carried through the sanctuary. 3 weeks ago, I discovered that my daughter and my adopted son have been conspiring to steal my fortune, declare me mentally incompetent, and imprison me in a nursing home. This wedding is a fraud designed to access family trust funds. Gasps erupted. People half rose from their seats. Evelyn made a choked sound behind me. Dominic's mask cracked. "William, you're having some kind of episode. This is dementia talking." I cut him off, my voice like steel. "I have recordings, Dominic. 47 minutes of you and Evelyn discussing every detail of your plan. Your fake marriage to Graham Wells here, who is actually an actor named Aaron Mitchell, hired for $50,000. The offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. The nursing home where you plan to lock me away." I pulled documents from the envelope, holding them up. "See, I have forensic accounting reports showing you've stolen $2.3 million over 3 years. I have evidence that you cut my brake lines 6 months ago attempting to murder me. I have proof that Dr. Gordon Price was paid $100,000 to falsify a mental competency evaluation." The church erupted in chaos, people shouting, crying, trying to process what they were hearing. Dominic's face had gone from pale to crimson. "You're insane, Evelyn. Tell them your father is losing his mind." I turned to look at my daughter. She stood frozen in her wedding dress, tears streaming down her face, her bouquet fallen to the floor. "Evelyn, you can still choose the truth. Tell them what you and Dominic planned." Her mouth opened, but no words came. She looked at Dominic, then at me, torn between the man who had manipulated her and the father who had raised her. Dominic grabbed her arm. "Don't say anything, Evelyn. He's trying to trick you." A voice from the back of the church cut through the chaos. "Mr. Steele isn't insane. I can testify to that." Every head turned. Laura Winters stood in the back row, removing her wide-brimmed hat. She walked down the aisle with quiet dignity, her eyes fixed on Dominic. His face went sheet white. "My name is Laura Winters. 2 years ago, I met a man named Matthew Reed in Boston. He courted me, proposed to me, and stole $400,000 from me. Then he vanished 3 days before our wedding." She reached the altar and looked directly at Dominic. "Matthew Reed and Dominic Steele are the same person. I have photographs, bank records, and a signed wedding venue contract to prove it." Dominic backed away, shaking his head. "I don't know this woman. She's confused, mistaken." Laura pulled a photograph from her purse and held it up. "This is Matthew Reed at our engagement party. Everyone in this church can see it's you." Natalie Pierce suddenly stood, her face panicked. "Dominic, we need to leave. Now." Her words were damning, an admission of complicity. I turned to Graham Wells, who stood paralyzed at the altar. "Now, Mr. Wells, or should I say Mr. Mitchell, would you like to tell everyone what Dominic paid you to do?" Graham looked at Dominic, at the crowd, at the FBI agents he had finally spotted. His shoulders sagged in defeat. $50,000. to pose as Evelyn's fiancé to go through with a fake marriage so she could access her trust fund. I'm an actor. It was just supposed to be a job. Evelyn made a sound like a wounded animal. She turned to Dominic, understanding finally breaking through. You were never going to marry me. This was all fake. Dominic reached for her. Baby, I can explain. She stumbled backward away from him. You used me. You lied to me. Everything was a lie. Her legs gave out, and she collapsed to her knees in her white dress, sobbing. Agent Monica Blake stepped forward from the side of the church, her FBI credentials raised high. Dominic Steele, Natalie Pierce, Aaron Mitchell, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, money laundering, and attempted murder. 6 agents moved in simultaneously. Handcuffs snapped around Dominic's wrists. You can't do this! He screamed, all pretense gone. I have rights. I walked to where Evelyn knelt on the floor and crouched beside her. I'm so sorry, baby, but you're safe now. You're finally safe. FBI agents moved down the aisle like shadows materializing. 300 guests sat frozen in shock. The sanctuary had transformed from a place of celebration to a crime scene in mere minutes. Agent Monica Blake led the operation with military precision, her team moving in coordinated silence. Dominic struggled against the handcuffs, his face contorted with rage. This is illegal. I want my lawyer, William. You'll pay for this. You're destroying your own daughter. 2 agents flanked Natalie Pierce, who had gone pale and silent, her earlier confidence evaporating as handcuffs clicked around her wrists. She shot a venomous look at Dominic. You said this was foolproof. You said he was too trusting to ever suspect. Dominic ignored her, still screaming at me. Everything I did was for this family, for Evelyn. You're the villain here, William, a bitter old man who can't accept that his time is over. A 3rd team of agents entered through the side door, escorting Dr. Gordon Price, who had been apprehended in the parking lot attempting to flee. His face was ashen, his expensive suit rumpled. The minister stood at the altar, his Bible still open, looking completely bewildered by the chaos erupting in his sanctuary. Around us, the 300 wedding guests remained paralyzed in their seats. Phones out, some recording, others calling loved ones, many simply staring in disbelief at the spectacle unfolding before them. I could hear whispered conversations rippling through the pews, shock, confusion, judgment. Tomorrow, this would be on every news channel, every social media platform, every gossip column. My family's destruction would become entertainment for millions. Agent Blake approached Evelyn, who still knelt on the floor in her wedding dress, makeup streaked with tears. Miss Preston, I need you to come with us for questioning. You have the right to remain silent. Evelyn's voice was barely audible. Am I under arrest? Blake's expression softened slightly. Not at this moment, but you are a person of interest in an ongoing federal investigation. We need your cooperation. I watched as another agent helped Evelyn to her feet. She looked at me then, and the hurt in her eyes was a knife to my chest. You knew. All this time you knew, and you let me walk down that aisle. You let me stand at that altar believing. Her voice broke. How could you? I stepped closer, but she backed away from me as though I were the criminal, as though I were the one who had betrayed her. I gave you chances, Evelyn. 3 chances to tell me the truth. That night in my study when you almost confessed. The midnight conversation when you chose to defend Dominic instead. The text message last night. Every time you chose him over the truth. Her face crumpled, tears flowing freely now, destroying the careful makeup that had taken hours to apply. Because I was scared, because I didn't know how to tell you that I'd already done terrible things. Dominic's voice cut across the church like a whip. Evelyn, shut up. Don't say another word without a lawyer. Even in handcuffs, even surrounded by federal agents, he was still trying to control her, still attempting to manipulate the situation to his advantage. Agent Blake pulled a tablet from her bag and held it up so Evelyn could see the screen. "Miss Preston, before you decide how to proceed, I think you should see these." She swiped through photographs with deliberate slowness, giving Evelyn time to process each devastating image. Dominic and Natalie kissing in a parking garage. Dominic and Natalie entering a hotel together. Dominic and Natalie at a restaurant holding hands, looking like lovers who had been together for years. Evelyn stared at the images, her face cycling through disbelief, horror, and devastation. No, that's not, he wouldn't. But even as she protested, I could see the truth settling into her bones, the realization that everything she had believed was a carefully constructed lie. Agent Blake swiped again, showing text message transcripts. Evelyn read them silently, her hands beginning to shake violently. I knew what she was seeing, because I had read those same messages in Kenneth's office days ago. Dominic calling her an idiot. Natalie laughing about how easily Evelyn had been manipulated. Their discussion of leaving her to face federal charges alone while they fled to Singapore with millions of stolen dollars. He was sleeping with Natalie. Evelyn's voice was hollow, emptied of all emotion. The whole time my maid of honor, my best friend Blake, nodded gravely. For at least 18 months, they planned to leave together 2 days after the wedding. You were never part of their escape plan, Miss Preston. You were the scapegoat. They positioned you to take complete legal responsibility while they disappeared. Evelyn looked at Dominic, who had finally stopped struggling against the agents holding him. Their eyes met across the church, across the gulf of betrayal that now separated them forever. "Tell me it's not true," she whispered, and in that moment she sounded exactly like the little girl who used to come to me asking if monsters were real. "Tell me you loved me. Tell me something about us was real." For a moment I thought Dominic might show some shred of humanity, some small recognition of the devastation he had caused. Instead, he smiled cold and cruel, and utterly without remorse. "You were useful, Evelyn. That's what you were. A way into your father's money. Did you really think I loved you? Look at yourself. You're weak, pathetic, exactly like your father. You made it so easy." The words hung in the air like poison gas, contaminating everything they touched. Evelyn's expression went blank, shock beyond tears, just empty devastation. I watched my daughter's heart break in real time, watched the last vestiges of trust and innocence drain from her face. Agent Blake guided Evelyn to a pew, away from the chaos of agents processing the crime scene and guests being interviewed as potential witnesses. I followed, sitting on Evelyn's other side, maintaining the careful distance she seemed to need. Blake pulled out official documents, her movements efficient but not unkind. "You're facing potential federal charges: conspiracy to commit fraud, conspiracy to commit elder abuse accessory to money laundering. If convicted, you could face 15 to 20 years in federal prison." Evelyn made a sound of pure anguish, the reality of her situation finally penetrating the shock. Blake continued in a measured tone. "However, the prosecutor is willing to offer you a deal. Full cooperation, testify against Dominic Steele, provide all information you have about the conspiracy, help us recover stolen assets. In exchange, the federal charges are reduced to probation and community service. No prison time." I pulled an envelope from my jacket, a different one than I'd shown the congregation earlier. Evelyn, there's something else you need to see." I removed a printed airline reservation with shaking hands. 1 ticket to Grand Cayman departing 2 days from now. 1 passenger, Dominic Steele. No ticket for you. He was leaving you behind. She stared at the paper, tears streaming silently down her face in tracks that had carved through her makeup. He was really going to abandon me, leave me to go to prison while he ran away with Natalie. I nodded slowly, letting the truth sink in. You were never his partner, sweetheart. You were his victim, just like Laura Winters, just like me. Blake gave Evelyn a moment to process, then spoke again with gentle firmness. Miss Preston, I need your decision. Will you cooperate with the federal investigation? Evelyn looked toward the side exit where Dominic was being led away in handcuffs. He turned back once his face twisted with contempt and delivered one final blow. You're pathetic, Evelyn. I hope you rot. She watched him disappear through the door, watched the man she thought she loved reveal himself completely as the monster he had always been. Then she turned to Blake with something like steel entering her voice for the first time. I'll cooperate. I'll tell you everything. Every conversation, every transaction, every lie. I'll testify against him in court. I want Dominic Steele to pay for what he's done. Blake nodded with approval. That's a brave choice, Miss Preston. I reached for Evelyn's hand, needing to offer comfort, needing to bridge the chasm between us. But she pulled away sharply. Don't, Dad. Not yet. I'm cooperating, but that doesn't erase what I did to you. I don't deserve your forgiveness. Before I could respond, before I could tell her that forgiveness was possible even if it would take time, Agent Blake pulled up another file on her tablet. Miss Preston, there's one more thing you should know about Dominic Steele. We believe he's connected to a death in Seattle in 2015. A woman named Margaret Chen, who died after he stole $800,000 from her. Evelyn's eyes widened with fresh horror. You think he killed someone? Blake's expression was grave, her voice carrying the weight of years of investigating the worst of human nature. The investigation is ongoing. But yes, we believe Dominic Steele is responsible for at least one death, possibly more. If you had married him, if you had continued with this plan, there's a strong possibility he would have eventually killed you too. Your father didn't just save your freedom, Miss Preston. He likely saved your life. Evelyn turned to look at me, truly seeing me for the first time since the arrests began. Oh my God. He would have killed me, wouldn't he? Once I wasn't useful anymore. I nodded slowly, my throat tight with emotion. Yes, sweetheart. I believe he would have. The headlines the next morning screamed about the billion-dollar family fraud scheme. I sat in my study 7 days after the wedding. That never was newspapers spread across my desk like evidence at a crime scene. Tech CEO exposes adopted son's elaborate theft ring. FBI arrests 3 in $1 million wedding day sting. Father saves daughter from nursing home plot. Each headline felt surreal, as though I were reading about someone else's shattered family, not the ruins of my own life. The media had descended like vultures within hours of the arrests. News vans camped outside my house for 3 days straight. Reporters shouting questions whenever I stepped outside, helicopters circling overhead to capture aerial footage. My phone rang constantly, interview requests from every major network publishers offering 6-figure book deals, true crime podcasts, wanting exclusive access. I refused them all. This wasn't entertainment. This was my family's destruction laid bare for the world to dissect. Kenneth Walsh delivered better news yesterday during our meeting downtown. We've recovered approximately 90% of the stolen funds, William. The Cayman accounts were frozen at 8 a.m. on the wedding day, exactly as planned. We've traced and seized assets from all the shell companies, NRS Holdings, Steele Consulting Group, Preston Advisory Services. Your financial situation is largely intact. He shuffled through additional paperwork. Laura Winters will also receive full restitution. The $400,000 Dominic stole from her is being returned from seized assets, plus interest accumulated over 2 years. The courts have also awarded her additional damages. That at least was justice. Laura had called to thank me the day after the arrests, her voice thick with emotion, but stronger than I'd ever heard it. William, you gave me something I thought I'd never have: closure. And a chance to see that bastard behind bars where he belongs. I told her it wasn't revenge we'd achieved. It was accountability. She laughed bitterly. Sometimes they're the same thing, and sometimes that's perfectly fine. The criminal proceedings moved with surprising speed. Dominic faced 15 federal charges and 3 state charges: wire fraud, money laundering, conspiracy to commit elder abuse, identity theft, interstate transportation of stolen property, attempted murder through the brake line, sabotage. Each charge carried years of potential prison time. His expensive attorney, brought in from New York, tried desperately to negotiate. He suggested mental illness defenses, claimed Dominic had a traumatic childhood before his adoption, offered character witnesses. But Agent Monica Blake had built an ironclad case. Forensic accounting reports documented every stolen dollar. Recorded confessions captured every damning word. Laura Winters's testimony established pattern and intent. Graham Wells had turned state's evidence. Dr. Gordon Price had pleaded guilty in exchange for a reduced sentence. The federal prosecutor estimated Dominic would receive 23 to 30 years in federal prison. Natalie Pierce faced 12 charges, likely 10 to 15 years. Dr. Price would serve 8 years and lose his medical license permanently. Evelyn had kept her word about cooperation. Over 5 grueling days of grand jury testimony, she provided detailed, painful accounts of every conversation, every transaction, every manipulation Dominic had employed. She described how he had isolated her from friends. After Elizabeth's death, convinced her I was becoming incompetent, persuaded her that stealing from me was actually protecting family assets. She revealed the fake therapy sessions he'd billed for pocketing $18,000 while exploiting her genuine grief. She admitted to signing documents she didn't understand, transferring money she knew wasn't hers, staying silent when she should have spoken. Her testimony had been crucial in establishing Dominic's pattern of psychological manipulation and coercive control. It earned her the cooperation deal: 3 years, probation, 500 hours of community service, mandatory therapy twice weekly, with a licensed trauma specialist, restitution payments, and a permanent criminal record. No prison time, but no escape from consequences. But the real punishment wasn't legal. It was the guilt I saw in her eyes every day, the weight of shame she carried, the way she could barely look at me without tears streaming down her face. The legal system had shown her mercy, but she showed none to herself. She was staying in the guest house now, neither of us ready for her to return to the main residence. The physical distance felt necessary, a buffer, while we both processed the wreckage. The guest house sat at the edge of the property, far enough to feel separate, but close enough that I could see lights on in the evenings when she was awake. Sometimes I stood at my bedroom window late at night, watching those lights, wondering if she was as unable to sleep as I was. We had dinner together twice that first week, stilted, painful conversations over takeout neither of us could taste, where we both tried desperately to find our way back to being father and daughter, but kept stumbling over the chasm of betrayal between us. The silences stretched longer than the conversations. The weight of unsaid words pressed down on us like physical pressure. Last night she asked the question I knew was coming. "Dad, will you ever trust me again?" Her voice was small, childlike, vulnerable, the same voice that used to ask if monsters under the bed were real, if I would always keep her safe. I set down my fork carefully and looked at her honestly, refusing false comfort. "It will take a lifetime to trust you again, Evelyn. Maybe longer, maybe forever. But I'm willing to try if you are. I'm willing to take that first step, even though I don't know where it leads." She nodded slowly, tears sliding down her face in tracks that had become heartbreakingly familiar. "I'm so sorry, Dad, for everything. For believing him, for not seeing what he was, for letting him turn me into someone Mom would be ashamed of, for hurting you in ways I can never take back." I wanted desperately to comfort her, to say it was all right, to pull her into my arms, the way I had when she was small, and scraped knees could be healed with bandages and kisses. But it wasn't all right. Not yet. Maybe not ever. I know you are, sweetheart. This morning a letter arrived. Prison mail, Federal Correctional Facility postmark. Dominic's distinctive handwriting that I recognized immediately from 24 years of birthday cards and thank you notes and business correspondence. My hands shook as I opened it, though I knew I shouldn't have. Nothing Dominic wrote could contain anything I needed to hear. The words inside were crafted to wound with surgical precision. You destroyed your daughter to satisfy your ego and your need for revenge. She'll never forgive you for what you did to her at that altar, for humiliating her in front of 300 people. You've lost her forever, old man. I hope you're happy with your Pyrrhic victory. Was it worth it? I sat for a long time staring at those words, feeling them try to burrow into my mind like parasites try to make me doubt. Dominic was still trying to manipulate me, still trying to control the narrative, still attempting to win even from behind bars where he would spend the next 3 decades. He couldn't accept defeat, couldn't accept that his carefully constructed scheme had crumbled. So he was attempting to poison my relationship with Evelyn from prison, planting seeds of doubt that might grow in the silence between us. Then I picked up a pen and wrote a single line on blank paper. I saved my daughter's life. That was worth everything. I would never send it. Dominic didn't deserve a response, didn't deserve to know his words had any impact whatsoever. But writing it reminded me why I had done what I did, why I had planned for 3 weeks. Why I had gathered evidence meticulously, why I had destroyed my family publicly in that sanctuary. Not for revenge, though God knows I had wanted that in my darkest moments. Not even primarily for justice, though that mattered deeply to my sense of right and wrong. For Evelyn, to save her from a man who would have used her, completely discarded her when she was no longer useful, and quite possibly killed her when she became a liability. The cost had been catastrophic. Our relationship was shattered, perhaps irreparably. Trust was gone, burned away in betrayal's fire, leaving only ashes and the faint hope that something might grow from those ashes eventually. The natural warmth that once flowed between a father and his daughter, the kind of bond that didn't overanalyze, didn't second-guess, didn't search every sentence for hidden intent, had slowly given way to a quiet, deliberate distance. For hidden meanings had been replaced by careful distance, formal politeness, and constant awareness of what had been lost. But she was alive. She was free. She had a chance, however small, however uncertain, to rebuild herself into someone better than the woman Dominic Steele had molded her to become. She had a future that didn't include federal prison or a shallow grave. That had to be enough, even when the silence between us felt unbearable. Sharon Mitchell visited yesterday afternoon, bringing cookies she'd baked herself, and the kind of straightforward compassion that had helped me survive those first terrible days. We sat in my study, and she didn't pretend everything was fine. "How are you really doing, William?" I gestured to the newspapers, to the letter from Dominic I hadn't yet thrown away. "Some days I think I did the right thing. Other days I wonder if I destroyed my daughter to punish my son." Sharon shook her head firmly. "You saved her life. Never doubt that. I was there when you overheard them planning to put you in that nursing home. I saw your face when you realized your own children were conspiring against you. What you did took more courage than most people possess." "Courage or cruelty?" I asked quietly. "Sometimes they're the same thing," she replied, echoing Laura Winters's words. "Sometimes love looks like destruction, because you're destroying the lies to save the person underneath." I thought about that after she left. Was that what I had done? Destroyed the lies Dominic had built around Evelyn so she could see herself clearly? Or had I simply destroyed her completely? Kenneth called this afternoon with updates on the investigation. The FBI had connected Dominic to 2 additional victims in Phoenix and Atlanta. The pattern was identical: target, Wealthy, recently bereaved individuals gain their trust, steal, systematically disappear. Total damages across all victims now exceeded $4 million. He had been operating this scheme for at least 12 years, possibly longer. William, Kenneth said carefully, there's something else. We found evidence that Dominic was researching methods to induce heart attacks that appear natural. The searches were on his laptop, dated 3 weeks before the wedding. We believe he was planning to kill you if the nursing home plan didn't work. The words should have shocked me. Instead, I felt only a dull, distant recognition. Of course, Dominic had been planning to kill me. Of course, the nursing home was just the first option with murder as the backup plan. A man who had already cut brake lines wouldn't hesitate to go further. Thank you for telling me, I said quietly. Kenneth was silent for a moment, then added, You saved your own life too, William. Not just Evelyn's. Remember that. After he hung up, I walked out to the guest house. Evelyn was sitting on the small porch, wrapped in a blanket, despite the warm evening. She looked up when she heard my footsteps, surprise and wariness crossing her face. Can I sit? I asked, gesturing to the chair beside her. She nodded, and we sat in silence for several minutes, watching the sun set over the property Elizabeth and I had chosen together 30 years ago. Finally, I spoke. Kenneth called today. They found evidence Dominic was planning to kill me if the other plans failed. Evelyn's face went white. Oh, God. Dad, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know he was planning that. I know, I said, and I did. For all her complicity in the financial crimes, I truly believed Evelyn hadn't known about the murder attempts. Dominic had kept that darkness hidden even from her. But it's why I did what I did, Evelyn. It's why I had to expose him publicly, why I had to make sure you saw the truth. He would have killed me. And eventually, he would have killed you too. She was crying silently, tears sliding down her cheeks. I was so stupid, so blind. How did I not see what he was? Because he was very, very good at being what people needed him to be, I said gently. He fooled me for 24 years. You never stood a chance. And someday, maybe she would understand that I had made the only choice a father could make when faced with saving his child's life at the cost of her love. Looking back at this family story, I realize I made choices no father should ever have to make. I destroyed my daughter's world to save her life. Some nights I still wonder if there was another way, a gentler path, that wouldn't have shattered her so completely in front of 300 witnesses. But then I remember the airline ticket with only Dominic's name, the text messages mocking her as a useful fool, the Seattle widow who died after discovering his theft. And I know gentleness would have gotten Evelyn killed. Here's what I learned from this painful family story: trust, once broken, takes lifetimes to rebuild. And sometimes love means making decisions that feel like betrayal in the moment, but prove to be salvation in hindsight. This wasn't about punishing Dominic, though he deserved every year of his sentence. It was about protection, about refusing to let evil wear the mask of family. And to you listening to this story, remember this: grandpa stories like mine aren't meant to entertain, they're meant to warn. I'm sharing this family story so you can learn from my mistakes, from my blindness, from the years I wasted trusting someone who was destroying us from within. My biggest regret: I waited too long. I ignored the red flags because I wanted to believe the best in people. I let manipulation disguise itself as love. I gave a predator 24 years to perfect his craft inside my home. Don't make the same mistake I did. Don't wait until you're standing in a bridal boutique overhearing a conspiracy. Don't wait until brake lines are cut and millions are stolen. Don't wait until the damage is catastrophic and irreversible. If something feels wrong, if someone isolates your loved ones, controls their decisions, monitors their communications, or makes them question their own reality, act immediately. Trust your instincts, because by the time you have undeniable proof, the destruction is already underway. Don't be like me, paralyzed by love and hope and the desperate need to believe your family is whole. God gave me the strength to stand in that church when every fiber of my being wanted to run. God gave me the wisdom to see through Dominic's deceptions when I was blinded by paternal love. And God, I pray, daily will continue to heal the wounds this family story has carved into all of us. Faith didn't make the choices easier, but it made them possible. It gave me the courage to do what was necessary, even when it felt like self-destruction. Here's my advice from these grandpa stories I carry. Protect your family before the wolves get too close. Because once they're inside your home wearing your last name sitting at your dinner table, the price of removing them is measured in shattered hearts and broken trust. Watch for the patterns: isolation control, financial irregularities, explanations that don't quite add up. Don't dismiss your concerns as paranoia. Don't let anyone convince you that questioning family loyalty makes you the villain. And if you discover betrayal, document everything. Gather evidence. Build an ironclad case. Because predators like Dominic don't confess. When confronted privately, they manipulate, they gaslight, they turn victims against each other. Only public exposure with undeniable proof can break their control. I lost 3 years I'll never get back. Evelyn lost her innocence, her trust, her sense of safety in the world. Our relationship may never fully recover, but she's alive. She's free. She has a future that Dominic Steele cannot touch. That outcome, however painful, however costly, is worth every sacrifice I made. This family story cost me everything and saved what mattered most. The lesson isn't about revenge. It's about vigilance. It's about having the courage to act when you discover evil masquerading as love. It's about choosing your child's survival over their temporary happiness. So learn from my pain. Don't wait as long as I did. Don't give predators time to perfect their schemes. Don't let politeness or family loyalty blind you to dangerous patterns. And when you finally act, do it decisively publicly with evidence that cannot be denied or twisted. I want to hear from you. If this grandpa's stories resonated with you, if you've faced similar betrayals, or if you have wisdom to share with others walking this painful path, drop a comment below. Your voice matters and might help someone else recognize the warning signs before it's too late. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it, someone who might be missing the red flags in their own family. And if you want more narratives that challenge, inspire, and prepare you for life's hardest moments, hit that subscribe button, because these conversations matter. And this community we're building together can make a difference. Thank you so much for staying with me until the very end of this difficult journey. Your time and attention mean everything. One final note: the stories you'll find on this channel include dramatized elements crafted for educational purposes and emotional impact. If this type of content doesn't serve your needs or preferences, I completely understand. Feel free to explore other videos that align better with what you're looking for.